All of the meaning currently known to human beings accounts for just 4.9% of all the meaning in the universe. The rest is a mysterious substance known as dark meaning. Now, dark meaning can't be directly apprehended, but we can infer its existence through various means. If, for instance, if you observe the flow of Oedipal undercurrents in Shakespeare's Hamlet, if you look at the distribution of portents in George Orwell's 1984, then you start to see the influence of something beyond the realm of the intelligible universe. Probably the best example, actually, of being able to detect dark meaning occurred in this very laboratory in the DMRI's headquarters. I was looking at the metatextual lensing of James Joyce's Ulysses, and I looked at I calculated the amount of parodic material in the text, and from that worked out what the degree of metatextual lensing should have been. And when I calculated that, it didn't add up, basically, so I recalculated, checked I hadn't made any mistakes. I hadn't, so the only conclusion I could come to was that there's some other force beyond the intelligible universe that is affecting our perception of meaning within the intelligible universe. And so the search for dark meaning was born. So just as a quick way of experiencing dark meaning, you can, if you imagine in your mind a kind of tree of influences, like a map of meaning. If you look at different texts throughout history, whether they be literary text, historical text, or whatever, you can see how one influences the other, and you plot them splitting off in different directions like a tree. So you create a kind of family tree of texts. And when you do that, step back with your mind's eye, observe the tree, and then you'll notice that just like all matter in the universe, most of it is empty space. The tiny little branches are surrounded by huge gaps of nothingness, and that is where dark meaning resides. But also, when you really focus on it, just step back, let your mind's eye take in what's going on, and then you notice the tree is swaying. There's a wind blowing the tree. The branches are moving, the leaves of the books are flapping in the wind. And that is the influence of dark meaning. You can see dark meaning, or at least its influence, with your mind's eye simply by imagining a tree of texts, a tree of meaning, a tree showing the pathways that meaning takes throughout our lives. So the Dark Meaning Research Institute, we've been going for a little while now, and we have operated underground in every sense. We're here at the moment in the secret bunker, in the main laboratory in the secret bunker, and we've also kept our work relatively secret up until now. The reason being that we're dealing with basically what happens to meaning in the aftermath of the death of the author. The death of the author was proclaimed by Roland Barthes many years ago, and it makes perfect sense to proclaim that the meaning of a text is no longer dependent on what the person who wrote the text says. That the reader, every individual reader, determines the meaning of the text. But what Barthes didn't mention is that when someone dies, that that person is dead, but the people who knew the person, the person doesn't just disappear. There's a body to dispose of. Some people also believe in the afterlife. So we're exploring the possibility that the author, who is dead, has possibly entered some kind of literary afterlife. So what we're doing is very much challenging authority, and it's not just the authority of the author, it's the authority of the establishment, the powers that be. And history has shown that anyone who attempts to disagree with or dissect some kind of grand narrative that's put in place by the powers that be, something bad will happen to them, basically. The people, as Bill Hicks said, the people who try and tell us that life is just a ride, we kill. There's a big historical precedent for that. So we've had to be careful about what we release publicly, how we do it. We're trying, to do that now, but we have to be relatively careful. So we're doing it in a piecemeal fashion. But the main thing is we found out some very groundbreaking things here through our research. The research is by no means complete, but what we found out is too big to sit on, basically, and we need to start releasing it to the public, and we'll be doing that through releasing reports and so on. So it's not easy to envisage exactly what the end result will be, but certainly we are approaching what I would describe as a linguistic singularity. That's another reason why the powers that be are very keen to keep this kind of information suppressed, because we're aiming towards some kind of future where meaning becomes freed up. The author is dead, but the meaning is still not flowing freely. So we envisage some kind of future in which there's free meaning for all, like free energy. And history has shown that people who've tried to introduce that in the past, like Nikola Tesla and so on, have been opposed. So we have to be careful about how we communicate this, but it is absolutely possible for meaning to be completely free, free-flowing, accessible to all around us, and this is also the linguistic singularity for which we need to prepare. So it can be a positive thing if we prepare for it. So there's different ways of looking at language in terms of our relationship to language. You could see language as being like a virus or a parasite that lives within us. And when you see all the kind of false dichotomies that exist in the world, everything being seen as black or white, or communism versus capitalism, or Christianity versus Islam, or whatever, creating all this tension and all these wars and things like that. You can see language as being like a virus, in the same way as like a computer virus that makes the computer act erratically, and all this erratic behaviour comes from false dichotomies, And so the linguistic singularity is a point where all these false dualities of language are brought together into a duality singularity. But another way of looking at our relationship with language is that we inhabit language. The language is basically a closed structure, a complete system within itself, almost like a being of some sort, but it needs fuel to be able to move. And we are the fuel. We are like the blood that's being pumped around the linguistic system. So in the future, when the linguistic singularity arrives, that is where what we're doing now is basically cutting language, splitting it in certain ways to the point of absurdity, so that the blood starts to flow out, and eventually language will start bleeding to death, in a sense, and this brightly coloured fluid inside, which is us, which is meaning, will start flowing out, and we'll be able to observe ourselves directly for the first time. We don't need language as some kind of mediator. So language will bleed to death, meaning will become visible, literally visible to us, and that is something we're aiming towards here, and you'll find out how that's possible as we report our findings.